Hello guys, and welcome to this Nuke tutorial. In this video we're going to learn how to create a multi-projection setup and use different cameras to project different textures and then blend between them nicely in Nuke. So we're gonna learn how to do that. And I'm gonna start by taking a look at the data that we have. First of all, we need the geometry that we're going to use, and right now this is what I have. It's showing black because there is no light in the scene, so I'm gonna quickly create one. As you can see, we have simple geo here, and the idea is we're going to project two different textures, this one and this one, from two different cameras. And I have a camera movement that is doing this, and it's rotating around the object. And what I want to do is I want to project at this frame when the camera is at the first frame, and then another projection at the end, and then use the animation to render that projection. And so we need to freeze the camera at this frame and at this frame, and then project from those two. So let's do that. I'm going to put down a project 3D node, and I'm going to use a frame hold. And in this frame hold, I'm going to set it to 1, and we're going to project this first texture. So we're going to set the camera and then the texture, and we'll want to apply this to the geometry that we have. So apply material and select the material and then the object, and now we should see our projection happening in the viewport. And because we don't have a light, so we're not getting, so you can see we have the first projection. I'm gonna also turn off, so we have the first texture projected from the first texture, and if I move the timeline, the camera doesn't move because of the frame hold. So we have our first result, and I'm going to put down a scanline render and connect this. And I'm going to copy the camera to simplify the connections and avoid having intersecting wires for the time being. So now we have our first projection, and if I play through, you can see that the texture is correctly projected. Now we're going to do the same thing for the other texture, and I'm going to delete the light here, and we're going to copy the same. So again, I'm going to copy the animated camera just to avoid having intersecting wires, and you guys can just use a postage stamp and hide the connection if you want, or you can use a dot and hide the input. But to make it clear, I want to keep it this way. So in the second projection, we want to project at the end. We want to use the camera when it's at the last frame and use that to project another texture onto the geo that we have. So in this case, I'm going to set the frame to 100, project 3D, same thing, and then apply material. This is the material, and this is the geo. I'm going to move this to the center, and now we should see the bear. The second texture projected onto the bear. I'm going to do the same thing with the scan line. We need to render this, and I'm going to use the same camera. And now we have our second texture projected from the camera at the last frame. So now the problem is, how do we blend between these two? How we only get the information that we need from this camera and nicely blended with the other one? Well, it's actually very simple. What we need is a mask that can see the position of the light, and then based on the geometry normals, generate that mask. So when we have a face facing the camera, we get full white, and as the normal starts to drift away, as the normal becomes more perpendicular to the camera, we need to basically get a black result at those points. So what we're going to utilize in this case is we're going to use the Lambertian law. And if we think about it, let's say we have a sphere, and I have geo here, and this is the normal of the surface at that point, and this is the normal of the surface at this point, and we have a camera doing this. Okay, let's say we don't have a camera, but we have a light instead. And so we place a light here, and we we assign a diffuse shader. And what the diffuse shader will do, it's going to basically use the Lambertian law and give us, based on the surface normal and the light, either 1 or 0, and it's going to blend between them. So the light that hits this points will give us back 1, and the light that hits this points will give us back 0, and anything in between. So if we use this result to blend in, to generate the mask that we need, we can nicely blend in between the different textures. And this is also how we create Fresnel in Nuke. So let's start by taking a look at the result and see how we can make use of this to create a Fresnel pass. And let's say I'm going to take a copy of the camera. I'm going to do it in a different place. And let's say around frame 50, I'm going to put a frame hold, okay? And I'm going to place a light. And in this light, I'm going to manually position it so that it's somewhere close to the camera. Something like that. And I have a diffuse shader already assigned, and I'm going to put all of this into the scene. And then we're going to use a scanline render and connect this. And if we take a look at the result, we should see it's 1. So I think the reason why it's rendering black at the moment is because the geometry doesn't have a normal. So I'm going to put down a normals node and set it to build. And let's see. So that should give us the normal. Gonna move the light a bit more. Yeah, it looks like the normal is inverted, so I'm gonna tick on invert, and now we should be able to see the result. Cool. So now we're lighting this bear using the light placed next to the camera. And if we take this result and invert it, you can see we have a Fresnel mask, a Fresnel pass. And if I pre-mult this to remove all the everything but the data inside, I also need to set the invert to only affect the RGB. So now we're only seeing that and pre-multing it with the alpha, with the original alpha, which is this. So you can see we have a Fresnel mask. So what we can do is we can place a light under each of the camera that we used for the projection, and then use that result as a mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a light, and this light we can connect the axis node, and if we do that, it's going to automatically parent the light under the camera or use the any transform information available. So I'm going to place a light here, and I'm going to put down a scanline node, the same thing, and we're going to fix that normal again so we get proper shading. And now if we connect the camera, which is this, to the scene, we need a scene with the light, so I'm going to put both. We will get our first mask. So this light here is placed on the camera that we used for the second projection, second texture, and now this render will give us the mask that we need. Now we would like to do the same thing for the other camera. So we're going to copy the light, place it here, do the same thing, and then we need to connect this to the scene. So I'm going to do that connection. It's a little bit confusing at the moment because of all the intersecting wires, but try to make it understandable. So I'm going to put down a dot, and I'm going to set it to hide input. It's not going to work. Okay, that's fine. So we'll leave it at that at the moment. And let's see, I think I can make it work. Still the same issue. Okay, so I'm going to connect the second light, which we placed here by just parenting it. And now I have the two renders, the two lights lighting the bare geometry, and we don't want both of them to be full white because that simply defeats the purpose. So I'm going to set a different color for each one of them. I'm going to set this one to be red, and you can see already it's lighting only this area now, and I'm going to set this one to be only blue. Cool. So now we have a red for the light for the camera on the right and blue for the camera on the left, and all we have to do is we only need to shuffle in each of those colors. So the red, and we're going to use that for this texture, so I'm going to put down an in node, and now we're using this mask information to isolate this texture, everything that is projected by the camera on the right. We're using the light, the diffuse shading from the light that we placed under that camera, and we're going to do the same thing, another shuffle to get the blue channel, which is the light on the left, and we're going to use that with the second render, which is this one. And now if we look at the result, sorry, we need to change this to blue and this one to red. Cool. So now we're masking both results, and all we have to do is we need to place in a merge node and combine both of them. And that's how I did the final projection. So the idea is to use a light that we parent to the camera that we need to project from, do a diffuse render from that camera, and then use that mask to generate the information, to isolate the data that we need from the texture being projected onto the geometry. And this will work perfectly with any complex geometry or anything like that. And the last thing I wanted to talk about quickly, so let's take a look again. We're only using two lights here, and we've used the red and green channels, the red and blue channels. And if we needed to do more projection, we can simply create another scan line and just have 3 lights and put those in red, green, and blue. We can also, I believe, use the alpha channel, but I'm not so sure about that. I wanted to show something else quickly, so I'm gonna take this geo here, and I'm going to copy. I'm gonna create another camera. And with this camera, I'm going to point it down, -90, and move it up. And instead of using a point light, so we've created point lights for both of them, I'm going to create a spotlight, and I will show why is that. And we're going to connect this to the scene. So the masks that we've created, we have red, green, and now white from the top. I'm going to change it to green. And if we look at the green channel, we can see it's only from the top. Now the advantage with using a spotlight, we can use the cone angle, and with this we can limit how much area we affect, how much we can control the radius of the mask, and we can use the cone penumbra to basically soften the edges of the projection. And I'm gonna briefly finish this, so I'll copy that. I have another texture that I'd like to project, and I'm going to copy the projection setup. And for the camera, we're going to use this, and we're going to use this geo, and this is the texture that we need, and then a scanline node. So object, and then the camera would be the same camera, which is this one, and this should give us the projection. Cool. So this is the projection from the top, and we can simply use the green channel to mask this out. So here, green channel, and then we use the in operation, and now we have the texture masked, and we can simply add that back on top of everything else. So we have 3 projection, and we've used a spotlight to control the region where we want the projection to happen. I'm gonna go back to the viewport and move the camera a bit so we can see it better. Something like that. So let's take a look at the projection and the mask. Cool. So now we have more data, and we can simply put that over, and now we have three projection happening onto the same object. I think that's pretty much it. I will have the project available, the final project available in Gumroad for download, and the link is below the video. Thanks for watching, and talk to you soon. Bye bye.